ever considered what will happen if your loved one can no longer live in the family home? Today, we will talk about that process. Hello, and thank you for joining today's session in the Connecting Our Community Speaker Series. The goal of this series is to connect the special needs community with valuable resources, and we do this each month on the fourth Wednesday from 11:45 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. My name is Christine Brookins, and for those who are familiar with me, you know that I am both a parent and a professional dedicated to serving the disability community. Each month, we speak with experts in fields relevant to this community. Last month, we learned about the Language and Behavior Center. I'm always open to suggestions for additional topics about which you would like to learn. But today, we are speaking with Sarah Keech of Oasis Senior Advisors. Sarah represents Oasis as a senior advisor. With her bachelor's degree in psychology and social work, Sarah has been serving aging seniors in Pennsylvania for years, including operating her own firm, Age and Dignity Consulting. As a helpline advisor with the Alzheimer's Association, Sarah provided caregivers with resources and education, as well as facilitated 2 support groups in the area. She has worked in hospice care, assisted living, and on the county and state levels with Medicaid recipients, assisting them in obtaining services. Helping seniors in our region to be safe is her driving force. Sarah enjoys cooking, traveling, and spending time with her golden doodle Bodhi. Sarah, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Christine. It's an honor to be here and hopefully share some valuable information.
Oh, I'm quite sure there will be value to what we discuss. But let's take a step aside. I just read through quite a background in your serving the senior community. If you don't mind, would you tell us why you're so passionate about this work?
Absolutely, and I'd love to be asked this question. When I was in my late 30s, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at a fairly young age. She was only about 67, 68. And at the time, I had not started in the field of working with seniors. I wasn't real familiar with Alzheimer's and dementia. I started to do a little bit of research. I took my mother to be diagnosed to an internist first. We started with that and then went from there to a neurologist. But she was at that point diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I started a very emotional and long journey with her over about a 5 or 6 year period of making a lot of tough decisions, legal decisions, financial decisions, care decisions. I had lost my father very closely to that time period that I had my mother diagnosed, so had to settle his estate and then make care decisions for my mom. So the elder care field is something that's very close to my heart. I've walked the journey of trying to find appropriate and affordable housing, trying to settle legal matters, as I said, financial matters, and also just as a caregiver, the emotional journey that takes place with that whole process. So I like to really do what I do in honor of my mom, and she's my hero, and I am blessed to have been in the area to be able to help take care of her and make those decisions. But I think families are comforted in the fact that I've kind of walked this journey and they know that I'm, experiencing the same stress and level of pain and things that they go through in making a lot of these tough decisions. So that's kind of my driving force.
Well, and I think that makes sense. You don't just talk the talk. You have walked in their shoes. And I think that's truly very important.
Thank you.
Like Sarah's mom, as our loved ones age, there is a likelihood that things will happen, whether like in her case an Alzheimer's diagnosis, but there's also possibilities of just aging and illness and anything that may lead to a disability. And I know this could result from a variety of concerns, but when it happens, families do struggle with where to turn and what to do. So we want to share today that help is available. Would you please tell us, who is Oasis Senior Advisors? What do you do?
Certainly. So a senior advisor is basically what we like to call an advocate for the senior population. We do represent the senior themselves. Our goal is always to keep the senior safe, try to find affordable solutions for them, try to brainstorm for a care plan. If a family contacts us and needs to stabilize a senior at home, we can refer them to resources such as home care, hospice care, durable medical equipment, the waiver program, the county waiver program, which we'll get a little more into, but just a lot of just guidance and support and pointing people in the right direction. But we are advocates for the senior population. Everything that we do with the senior and the family is free of service. So we do not charge the families, and we help to guide the loved one into affordable housing that may really make sense to the whole family as far as location, cost, care provided. We want to make sure that we're finding the right fit as far as housing for the senior to kind of keep them safe and stabilize them. So that's mainly what we do. Again, it's a free service, and we get paid by the community that we transition the loved one into. So that's kind of how our business model works. We are a franchise. We service all of Western PA, and Oasis Senior Advisors is a national franchise. So you'll find franchises across the country, but we represent the Western Pennsylvania area. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And I do want to point out to our audience, again, this series is to provide resources to the disability community. And I guess some people may not think of seniors as belonging to that population. But as we consider that lens, what are some of the reasons why families may seek your services?
Well, the families come to us for a variety of different reasons. It may be just that their senior loved one is living at home, still maintaining a house, trying to, fix things, trying to grocery shop, get to doctor's appointments. And we all know how it can be very challenging to maintain a home. It's costly, it's labor intensive. So sometimes the senior just says, I don't want to live here anymore. This home is too big for me, too many memories here, too much stuff. They need to downsize. Because of just aging in itself, they may not be driving anymore, and they may be therefore disconnected, lonely, depressed. We find nowadays that mental health is very, very prevalent with the senior population. So being at home and isolated causes depression, it causes cognitive decline. And many times families just say, hey, I'm traveling over to mom's home every other day to make sure she's eating, that she's taking her medications properly, that she's caring for herself. And, a lot of families tell me, I feel like my loved one is depressed, disconnected. So in that case, we'll start maybe looking at independent living options. If someone is coming out of a nursing home rehab, we then look for assisted living options. Many of these communities nowadays are called aging in place, and they have all levels of care. So a person can go in really needing very little care, and as they decline or they need, higher levels of care, they can then move into different floors or different units within the same property, same community, and therefore not have to leave, the building and leave that particular community. So it's very convenient for families nowadays, but lots and lots of reasons that families contact us.
So I'm sure in every family, it's a unique situation, for each family, for each loved one, for each community. Are there specific health concerns or medical conditions that tend to fast forward that and put them on a track to contact you more often than others?
Absolutely. Everything from, let's say a person has had a stroke and they have mobility, ambulatory deficits, and they're not able to navigate their home anymore. That could be, one trigger that causes someone to want to transition. It could be that the home has many steps and they're a fall risk, and there's been a couple falls, and there might have been a broken bone. So that can obviously pose a risk. But more importantly, the families that call us a lot seem to be those that have a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's. Cognitive decline is typically a trigger. A person with Alzheimer's and dementia can suffer from everything from wandering, exit-seeking behaviors. They can have a lot of agitation and restlessness where they're not really sleeping well at night. just inability to really properly care for themselves. And the caregivers just frankly get exhausted, whether it's the spouse taking care of the loved one or whether it's the adult children. That seems to be the most common reason that the families contact us for transition because the person can just simply no longer live in the home anymore. We find even if a person has moved their loved one in with them, again, the caregiver burnout can be really high and it can be just a cause for concern. Caregivers can decline quicker sometimes than the loved one themselves because it's just a lot of work. It's a 24-hour a day job when you're caring for somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yes, it is. And you and I are both familiar with what that looks like.
Hmm.
So with cognitive decline, you mentioned that it can have an impact on the caregivers as well, but in addition to just maybe forgetting things, how
Hmm.
else does that cognitive decline impact the person's physical health?
Well, the cognitive decline can really cause, again, inability to be able to, perform activities of daily functioning. So they may, not want to shower. They may not want to take care of themselves. They may forget how to use the stove. They can cause accidents in the home. Obviously, that poses a high risk. Medically, just the inability to be able to sometimes communicate what they need, what they want, and then the behaviors that can really exhibit themselves. There's a behavior that we refer to as sundowning, which can be kind of dangerous. It does sort of manifest itself in the sense of the person gets their days and nights mixed up and they become highly agitated, say, as soon as it gets dark. So 5, 6 o'clock, they start becoming very agitated. A lot of times, they can get very restless and as I said, they exit seeking. So they get confused about their environment and they want to leave their home. But more importantly, they may be on a medication that's causing side effects. It may be causing dizziness. It may be causing, further confusion, dehydration. There's just so many elements to that, the diagnosis that could really, pose a risk and a threat for other things. So, it's just it can be very challenging for families.
Well, and you and I have spoken about this, and you mentioned the story with your mom, but I think, it bears repeating that we as family members need to pay attention to these things, not just if they happen to forget an appointment or something like that, but what about all these other things that it impacts?
Mhm.
You also mentioned medication, and I would imagine simply as people age, there are conditions that lead them to taking medications, but how does that potentially lead to the need for greater care?
Hmm. Well, let's just first state that in any personal care environment, when a person transitions into personal care, the state regulation is that the medications really must be taken over by the staff. So we have med techs, which they're referred to, that act as the administrators of the medications in the communities. At home, obviously, if a person is not taking their medications properly, if they're missing doses, if they're taking too much, again, this could cause a lot of side effects. It can cause falls. It can really just, be a bad scenario for someone going downhill quicker. They have a fall, they break a hip, they go into the hospital, nursing home, and it starts this whole cycle of, just downward spiral. I think it's oftentimes too, it's important to state that an older person, when they go into the hospital, usually one day can be equivalent to a week for a normal person that's healthy. So it's
Oh,
really a setback when a loved one, does have a fall or a medical event that causes them to go into the hospital. It can be really, really just a big setback. So we find that especially the dementia folks, can kind of regress. And so we do what we can to try to keep them out of the hospital. But yeah, the meds can be, a sticking point for sure. And especially if, let's say a person has medication that they have to take 4 different times throughout the day and they're not able to really manage that. You've got families that are really pressed to try to find somebody that can take over that task and make sure that those medications are given correctly. And home care agencies can assist with that, but most of the time it's more of a home health situation where you're paying a lot more money for someone to come in and oversee that task for you. So
Well, and I'm
can
sure
be
many families like their loved ones to remain in their homes as long as possible.
hmm
But I do think, as we're talking about, there are situations where if they can be managed in their home, great. But if they can't, you do need to seek that additional help.
hmm
And you mentioned those with cognitive decline, but those that don't and have physical ailments, what you talked about with the regression, I imagine one thing, someone that doesn't even have a cognitive decline, one fall or one medical condition could set them down a path that may lead them in the direction of needing Oasis, right?
Right, absolutely. And I think it's also important to understand a lot of people call us and they sort of have this mindset of, my mother said she'll never go to a nursing home, or I never want my parent to be in a nursing home. And a lot of people have this vision of, sitting in the wheelchair up at the nurse's station, just sort of drugged out and not really, having any quality of life. These communities nowadays that are built are beautiful. They are meant for, I mentioned aging in place. They're
Mhm.
meant for going in and being able to really thrive and enjoy your life as best you can. There's lots of activities that are offered. There's wonderful food. There's entertainment that they bring in. Your laundry gets done. Your apartment gets cleaned. There's fun events that they take the seniors out to see, holiday lights and musical shows and things like that, or take them to the museum. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck for, the cost of residing in one of these properties. And we find that especially with the seniors that are, basically depressed and disconnected, they can really thrive. They're suddenly making new friends and just having a whole new social network and taking part in activities. So we've seen many, many cases where the senior goes in and maybe they're kind of dragging their feet, like, I'm doing this because my loved one is wanting me to, and they're sort of forcing it. But they get in there and then they realize, wow, this is kind of like being on a cruise ship, or sort of like a resort, because they have a brand new social life to take advantage of, or, new friends to make. They start doing crafts and playing the piano and doing art. And, there's just a lot of things that are available to the seniors. So it's no more of this, I'm going to live in a nursing home for the remainder of my life and just waste away.
Right.
Um,
Well, and I
so
think what you just said there was part of my family's story.
mhm.
I expected my parents to be resistant, but my father found one. He had a whole new audience for his stories. And to my mom, I said, it's like you're on a cruise. You're going
Yeah,
to the Lido deck and you're going to play games or do an activity. And I think that they both found that enjoyable. So,
exactly.
with assistance to get them to something like that, it does add a whole new level to the quality of life.
Absolutely, it does. Yep.
So I do want to revisit. I know we talked about cognitive decline. Is this a common reason why families are reaching out to Oasis?
Oh yeah. Oftentimes, they just say, I cannot do this anymore. It comes to a point where the family has to really make a tough decision. And, we're really about getting all the family on board too. We can do a Zoom call with the family to kind of review the options, talk about the cost of care, refer them to an elder law attorney if they need POAs and living wills done. The powers of attorney are important just in making financial decisions. But we definitely want the family to be involved as much as they can, and of course the senior to be involved too, because we like to, when we can, we like to really have the senior help to make their own decisions. Most of the time, if there's an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis, it's tough to, include the senior in that decision making, because they're either not aware of what's happening, or, they're just not capable of the decision making. But, we want to make sure the family is choosing the right fit as far as what they can afford, the location, the cost. I'm sorry, I did say what you can afford and the cost, but the care provided, it has to be the right fit as far as what the care needs are. So,
Absolutely. We've
mhm.
also talked a little bit, but if you could expand a little bit on safety. I know safety is a big factor.
Hmm.
What is it that you do that can help provide a safer environment or reasons why we might need this?
Well, safety comes into play a lot in Western PA. The homes here are usually two-story homes built on a hill. A lot of times there's steps leading up into the front door. The steps may not be maintained properly. They may be crumbling, so that's obviously causing, when the loved one is going in and out of the home, that's a high risk for fall. Going down to the basement to do laundry, ugh, that's a big one. And I can't tell you the number of families that I've spoken to where, dad's been navigating these wooden steps to go down to the laundry room and trips and falls and, gets injured. Oftentimes there's not proper lighting in a stairwell that's going to the basement, so they can't see. And, next thing you know, there's an accident. So safety is, very important. Especially as I stated with Alzheimer's and dementia. I mean, there comes a point in time where the doctor may say this person cannot drive anymore. I mean, there will be a time, especially with that diagnosis. And oftentimes the senior themselves gets very upset and angry when their driving privileges are taken away, and the family is challenged to try to figure out how to navigate that. It comes to sometimes hiding the keys or just taking the car away completely, and that can be a real battle. But safety, we always have to look at falls in the home, whether that person's driving and at risk for accidents, vision deficits, hearing deficits. These are all disabilities that would cause an aging senior to be at risk for accidents, falls, and health events. So
Right.
safety is the key. We want to stabilize. We want to offer solutions. We want to make sure that that senior is getting their needs met. So,
Well, and it sounds like there are a lot of good options, but when we look at this, how big is the need for your services?
very big. We're very busy. We get a lot of, calls of couples. Maybe there might be a couple living in their home that, one's trying to take care of the other, and, one might have cognitive issues while the other one might have physical disabilities. So, the two of them together are, we sort of say, well, that's one whole person, trying to take care of each other. But oftentimes we get that situation where it's just important that, they consider, let's move on, let's sell the home, let's, really move into a more stable situation. But, everything from, like we talked about, falls, cognitive decline, wanting to just be in a smaller house. The need is great. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, mental health is a really big concern nowadays. We have so many seniors, especially post-COVID, that, kind of isolated themselves in the home. They refuse to really go out and go to the store. Of course, the convenience of having groceries delivered and things like that is nice, but, it's also caused a lot of isolation, a lot of disconnection, a lot of depression, anxiety. The state of the world, obviously nowadays, the economy, these are things that seniors are focused on. A lot of them are sitting at home just with the news on all day, and they're getting all this negative information, and, it's causing them stress, anxiety, depression. So we want to always offer that transitioning into an independent living, even if you don't need, care right now,
Right.
it could really be just such a benefit to that senior to be in an environment where they are interacting with others, taking part in socialization, taking part in activities, and just having some oversight of some sort, eating 3 square meals a day, getting medications administered correctly. These are all things that will not only boost their mental health, but stabilize them and help them to thrive and be more independent. So I look at it as they can be more independent living in a care facility than they
Sure.
are sometimes at home. So
So, I guess statistically speaking, do most families begin these conversations early and plan long before the need?
no. Unfortunately, we find that a lot of folks haven't pre-planned, and we're constantly trying to educate. It's important, before, I mean, I think the baby boomers that we deal with that have elderly parents, they're learning from these situations that, hey, I guess when I realized the cost of care, as a 55-year-old, a 65-year-old, you need to start really pre-planning. You need to plan for retirement. You need to put the money away. You need to purchase the long-term care policies. You need to basically, save so that you have that money put away for care. I tell people all the time, if you end up in a nursing facility, unfortunately, you're going to go through your assets and savings in a much quicker manner than you would if you go into a personal care home. Even though personal care homes, otherwise known as assisted living in Pennsylvania, is private pay. So unfortunately, the only thing that will help cover the cost of that would be a long-term care policy. There's a veterans benefit called the aid and attendance benefit that's also applicable for veterans and their spouses. But in many cases with our families, they're dipping into investments, they're dipping into their retirement, they're selling a home to help pay for care. But if they go into a nursing home directly from home or from the hospital, they're going to drain their assets so quickly that they may have enough to last a year or two in a nursing home. Whereas if they're in personal care, they're going to go through their money half as quick, and they're going to get better care, and they're going to have a much happier, better quality of life. So we're always advising, please don't end up in a nursing home. Nursing homes aren't horrible places. They're just not the places where most people would want to be. So,
And it sounds like there are a lot of folks who have never planned for any of this. I mean, you're advising people start planning sooner, but if there are a lot of folks that have never planned for it, this is probably one of those situations where you're hearing from them at a critical time, right?
right. Yeah, oftentimes they're a little bit sticker shocked at the price of care. So, just to throw it out there, we transition folks into independent living for as low as $2,500 a month. The cost of care, as you get into the higher levels, with someone that needs more like a dementia secured community, that would be, secured as far as, decreasing on the wandering and exit seeking behaviors. Something like that could go up to 8,000 to 9,000 per month, unfortunately. So, when we talk about the cost of care, it's certainly one of these situations where, retirement planning is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely. And I'm quite sure, as we approach the holidays, while it may not be the best or most fun conversation to have, it probably is a whole lot better to have the conversation around the dinner table than around a hospital bed, right?
Yes, you are absolutely correct about that. And those are good opportunities. I mean, the families together, have a 15-minute conversation about what your loved ones would want. Find out, what kind of assets and savings your parents have, or your grandparents, or, aunt and uncle. It's important just to have these conversations to let your family members know, I'm here to help. I'm here to refer you to services that could really guide you. Again, our service is free, and we will talk to anybody, regardless if you have assets or not. I can certainly always educate people on the county waiver program if they're a lower income type, situation. If they do have a little bit of assets, we can find them something that's affordable. So we will help anyone. And just to let you know, we personally guide these families. We set up the tours, we tour with them. We're there to be the eyes and the ears to really research that particular community and to ask the questions that the loved one, or I'm sorry, that the family or the power of attorney may not think of. Their loved one can come with us on the tour. So we're here guiding and hand-holding through that whole process to ensure that they're making the best decision that they can, and that the whole family can be comfortable with the decisions that they're making. So
Well,
it's
you just
important.
mentioned the process. So can you tell me a little bit about what the typical process looks like? How do you start the process?
Sure. Well, typically, if a family member calls me and they give me sort of an idea of what's currently happening with their loved one, I'm taking kind of a medical background a little bit, finding out if the power of attorney has been obtained, getting the medical information as far as like who's their PCP, what other specialists are involved with the care. kind of, has there been hospitalizations lately? How many medications are they taking? So typical questions to get the medical background. We then go into a very brief financial background, basically asking what the monthly income is. Do you own a home? Do you have investments? We just want to get a general idea of what they can afford. And then we can, like I said, plug them into maybe the VA program, or if there's a long-term care policy to activate, we can, talk about that a little bit. But yeah, then we sort of go into plugging all of our information into a database. Our database will come up with probably up to 10 properties, communities that would be appropriate for that particular family. We send that via email to the family, to the client, to the person that's kind of making the decisions,
Sure.
and they review all the options and we sort of narrow it down. So we may be going on 4 or 5 tours. We may go on 9 tours. It just depends on what the family wants to look at. But again, it's all based on location, cost, and care provided. So it's pretty, well-rounded process that we offer.
And you talked about you actually go on those tours with the family. I think that's critical. You do this every day. Hopefully, they're
Yes.
doing it once in a lifetime.
Right. And the properties themselves, they make us privy to all the specials that are being offered, whether it's, they're going to waive a community fee or they're going to have a 6 month, discount on the room and board. Because most communities, they have a room and board charge and then they will assess the person as far as a point system on the care that they need. So the room and board is typically separate from the level of care cost. So we are privy to all those specials and we, work directly with the communities. We have contracts with all of them to really work and try to negotiate pricing if we can. So the service that we provide is very valuable when you're starting that search. And we always ask folks, let us do the legwork. Let us schedule the tours. Let us find the options. I mean, sometimes I've found options for folks with a property that may be 2 miles from their home that they never even really knew existed because it sort of sits back in the woods and
Right.
it has some nice property to it. So a lot of times we're valuable in that regard.
And I know you've said this a couple times, but I think it definitely bears repeating. So I'm going to ask the silly question of how much does this service cost?
Well, it is a free service. And again, we get paid by the community that we transition the loved one or the senior into. So we do have contracts, and the communities really love working with us. They love to partner with us. They, enjoy us bringing them clients that would be appropriate for their community. So
So there's no downside for families to contact Oasis. There's no
that's
cost
correct.
to do so. Okay.
Right.
Now, they've worked with you, hopefully chosen the perfect place for grandma or grandpa. When a
Mhm.
residence is selected, what is the timeline for moving?
Well, my goodness, it could be anywhere from a week to 3 months. Some families we've worked with for a year. It's kind of like being a realtor in a way, and I do dub myself the realtor to the senior population. But yes, if they're coming out of the rehab, sometimes it's a scramble to try to find the right fit. And we have a few days, to get them into a proper community. Other times, if they're coming from home, it may be, gee, I really am going to take a few months to start, downsizing, getting rid of stuff, getting the house cleaned out. They might want to do a little home improvement, before they sell the home. So it's a variety of different reasons. So a move-in transition can go anywhere from a week to a year. It just depends on the situation. But we are happy to work quickly if we need to.
Right. And as they go through, whether the individual or the family goes through that process, do you have partners that help with whatever that downsizing may look like or that clearing out?
Absolutely. We do have partners that we will refer to. Everything from, getting the contents of the home packed up and actually moved to, getting them plugged into, like I mentioned, an elder law attorney to do some paperwork, to a realtor to help list the home and get the home sold. We have, other types of transition companies that we work with. So we can really plug in a lot of resources, and these are very reliable, honest resources that we've utilized in the past that have helped us and been, great partners with us. So yes, we definitely refer to a lot of different organizations.
I would imagine, especially for those families where perhaps the adult children don't live in the same area as the aging parent, that's
Yes,
got to be very helpful that you have those resources.
absolutely. Hmm.
As we talk about some of this, you've mentioned that this type of care is not covered by insurance. You mentioned long-term care insurance, but when we're talking medical insurance, this isn't something that families are going to be able to say, I'll take the Taj Mahal. It's okay. My Blue Cross will cover it.
No, absolutely not. And that's really a shame. And I hate to break that news to families. I think that's why it's so important to educate. We all need to do our part to educate our clients and the folks that we help because they need to understand, it's a private pay type situation. Insurance doesn't cover it. You can go on Medicaid in Pennsylvania, but unfortunately, Medicaid is only accepted at a skilled nursing facility. Typically, when someone comes out of the hospital and they have to go to a rehab to get stronger, for a period of time, Medicare will pay, typically it's up to 21 days, like 3 weeks of coverage. They may have a Medigap plan too that can pick up some of the costs, but once they get to that point in their rehab where they're not really improving and it's not proven, these are things that have to be submitted daily to Medicare as far as notes and showing that there's been, strength and improvement. So once the Medicare runs out, the person is on their own, even if they have to remain in the nursing home. They're private paying, and believe me, nursing home costs can be well over $300 a day. As I mentioned, assisted living is not as expensive as that. They're not charging a daily rate, they're charging more of a monthly rate. So room and board would be one cost, and then level of care would be a separate cost. So you are definitely saving money. A lot of people get sort of held hostage in the skilled nursing environment, and it's sad. They just sort of get stuck in the system. They don't have an advocate. We again are the advocates. So if anybody out there has a family member that they feel got sort of stuck in the system, in that case, call us. We're happy to provide options and guidance and support to try to explain and figure out a different scenario for you. So.
And since you do this every day, do you have suggestions for the families on how they can plan for the financial aspects? Or if it's not planning, it might be the implementation if it's an urgent situation. What do you tell them to do?
Well, I tell them to find a good financial advisor. Start that discussion, start that educating yourself, start to look into long-term care insurance, begin that conversation for long-term care planning. It's important. You can set a certain amount of money aside every month to save for that. There's certain, lots of products out there in looking at retirement planning. But I just urge everybody have the conversation, start it in your 40s and your 50s. And, it's never too late, but we want to start early so that we can start investing in our future care. The cost of care is always rising, as we know. It's just, it's not cheap. We know that. And we definitely, admit that to the folks, that we work with, but we have to have the money put aside to be able to afford it and talk to a good financial planner and get guidance and education, and that's why it's important.
And I think that, as we said, at this time of year, having conversations may be very appropriate. If we have people listening that are thinking this is something that they need for their family, let's start with, do you have a specific territory that you serve?
We serve pretty much all of Western Pennsylvania, so we mainly focus in Allegheny County, but we go up into Butler, Beaver, Washington. We have clients all over the area. We just did a wellness fair up in Newcastle. My colleague who owns our franchise, Ben Meyer, he went to Johnstown a couple weeks ago. So, we will travel for our clients because there is such a need and they really need guidance. And Oftentimes they're just overwhelmed with trying to provide the care and figure out how they're going to get this whole process started. They're just overwhelmed. So we will definitely help any family that contacts us. And even if it means, referring them to another Oasis franchise that might be out of state, but we're happy to connect. You can go on our website, Oasis Senior Advisors Southwest Pittsburgh, and you can find out about us, about the services that we provide, and find out about, just the national franchise as well.
And that's an appropriate time for me to share my screen so that everyone can get your contact information. I'm hoping that this is viewable. It's always, every month I struggle with this, but nonetheless, if you need to reach out to Sarah at 412-818-4000, email skeech@youraosisadvisor.com, or as she said, take a look at the website, oasissenior.advisors.com/southwest-PA. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who listened in today. Thank you to Sarah for sharing all of this great information. We could go on for a long time because there's so much that you need to do. But I do just want to say thank you for sharing. And
Thank
then
you.
as a reminder, we do meet on the fourth Wednesday of every month. So next month on Wednesday, December 27th, we will speak with Karen Schuley of Face to Face Healing. So thank you very much for joining us today.